The complete work of Swami Vivekananda, Video 22, Chapter 7, Dhyana and Samadhi. We have taken a cursory view of the different steps in Raja Yoga, except the finer ones, the training in concentration, which is the goal to which Raja Yoga will lead us. We see, as human beings, that all our knowledge, which is called rational, is referred to consciousness. My consciousness of this table and of your presence makes me know that the table and you are here. At the same time, there is a very great part of my existence of which I am not conscious. All the different organs inside the body, the different parts of the brain, nobody is conscious of these. When I eat food, I do it consciously. When I assimilate it, I do it unconsciously. When the food is manufactured into blood, it is done unconsciously. When out of the blood all the different parts of my body are strengthened, it is done unconsciously. And yet it is I who am doing all this. There cannot be 20 people in this one body. How do I know that I do it and nobody else? It may be urged that my business is only in eating and assimilating the food, and that strengthening the body by the food is done for me by somebody else. That cannot be, because it can be demonstrated that almost every action of which we are now unconscious can be brought up to the plane of consciousness. The heart is beating apparently without our control. None of us here can control the heart. It goes on its own way. By practice, man can bring even the heart under control, until it will just beat at will, slowly or quickly or almost stop. Nearly every part of the body can be brought under control. What does this show? That the functions beneath consciousness are also performed by us. Only we are doing it unconsciously. We have then two planes in which the human mind works. First is the conscious plane, in which all work is always accompanied with the feeling of egoism. Next comes the unconsciousness plane, where all work is unaccompanied by the feeling of egoism. That part of mind work which is unaccompanied with the feeling of egoism is unconscious work, and that part which is accompanied with the feeling of egoism is conscious work. In the lower animals, this unconscious work is called instinct. In higher, the highest of all animals, man, what is called conscious work prevails. But it doesn't end here. There is a still higher plane upon which the mind can work. It can go beyond consciousness. Just as unconscious work is beneath consciousness, so there is another work which is above consciousness, and which also is not accompanied with the feeling of egoism. The feeling of egoism is only on the middle plane. When the mind is above or below that line, there is no feeling of I, and yet the mind works. When the mind goes beyond this line of self-consciousness, is samadhi or superconsciousness. How, for instance, do we know that a man in samadhi has not gone below consciousness, has not degenerated instead of going higher? In both cases, the work are unaccompanied with egoism. The answer is by the effects, by the result of the work. We know that which is below and that which is above. When a man goes into deep sleep, he enters a plane beneath consciousness. He works the body all the time. He breathes, he moves the body. Perhaps in his sleep, without any accompanying feeling of ego, he is unconscious, and when he returns from his sleep, he is the same man who went into it. The sum total of the knowledge which he had before he went into the sleep remains the same. It doesn't increase at all. No enlightenment comes. But when a man goes into samadhi, if he goes into a fool, he comes out a sage. What makes the difference? From one state a man comes out the very same man that he went in, and from another state the man comes out enlightened, a sage, a prophet, a saint. His whole character changed, his life changed, illumined. These are the two effects. Now the effects being different, the causes must be different. as this illumination with which a man comes back from samadhi is much higher than can be got from unconsciousness, or much higher than can be got by reasoning in a conscious state. It must therefore be superconsciousness, and samadhi is called the superconscious state. This, in short, is the idea of samadhi. What is its application? The application is here. The field of reason or of the conscious working of the mind is narrow and limited. There is a little circle within which human reason must move. It cannot go beyond. Every attempt to go beyond is impossible, yet it is beyond this circle of reason that there lies all that humanity holds most dear. All these questions, whether there is an immortal soul, whether there is a God, whether there is any supreme intelligence guiding this universe or not, are beyond the field of reason. Reason can never answer these questions. What does reason say? It says, I am agnostic. I do not know either yeah or nah. Yet these questions are so important to us. Without a proper answer to them, human life will be purposeless. All our ethical theories, all our moral attitudes, all that is good and great in human nature have been molded upon answers that have come from beyond the circle. It is very important, therefore, that we should have answers to these questions. If life is only a short play, if the universe is only a fortuitous combinations of atoms, then why should I do good to another? Why should there be mercy, justice, or fellow feeling? The best thing for this world would be to make hay while the sun shines, each man for himself. If there is no hope, why should I love my brother and not cut his throat? If there is nothing beyond, if there is no freedom, but only rigorous dead laws, I should only try to make myself happy here. You will find people saying nowadays that they have utilitarian grounds as the basis of morality. What is this basis? Procuring the greatest amount of happiness to the greatest number. Why should I do this? Why should I not produce the greatest unhappiness to the greatest number if that serves purpose? How will utilitarians answer this question? How do you know what is right or what is wrong? I am impelled by my desire for happiness and I fulfill it, and it is in my nature. I know nothing beyond. I have these desires and must fulfill them. Why should you complain? Whence come all these truths about human life, about morality, about the immortal soul, about God, about love and sympathy, about being good, and above all, about being unselfish? All ethics, all human action, and all human thought hang upon this one idea of unselfishness. The whole idea of human life can be put into that one word, unselfishness. Why should we be unselfish? Where is the necessity, the force, the power of my being unselfish? You call yourself a rational man, a utilitarian, but if you do not show me a reason for utility, I say you are irrational. Show me the reason why I should not be selfish. To ask one to be unselfish may be good as poetry, but poetry is not reason. Show me a reason. Why shall I be unselfish, and why be good? Because so and so say, so does not weigh with me. Where is the utility of my being unselfish? My utility is to be selfish if utility means the greatest amount of happiness. What is the answer? The utilitarian can never give it. The answer is that this world is only one drop in an infinite ocean, one link in an infinite chain. Where did those that preached unselfishness and taught it to the human race get this idea? We know it is not instinctive. The animals which have instinct do not know it. Neither is it reason doesn't know anything about these ideas. Whence then did they come from? We find in studying history one fact held in common by all the great teachers of religion the world ever had. They all claim to have got their truths from beyond. Only man, only many of them didn't know where they got them from. For instance, one would say that an angel came down in the form of a human being with wings and said to him, "Here, O man, this is the message." Another says that a deva, a bright being, appeared to him. A third says he dreamed that his ancestor came and told him certain things. He didn't know anything beyond. That, but this is common, that all claim that this knowledge has come to them from beyond, not through their reasoning power. What does the science of yoga teach? It teaches that they were right in claiming that all this knowledge came to them from beyond reasoning, but that it came from within themselves. The yogi teaches that the mind itself has a higher state of existence, beyond reason, a superconscious state, and when the mind gets to that higher state, then this knowledge beyond reasoning comes to man. Metaphysical and transcendental knowledge comes to that man. This state of going beyond reason, transcending ordinary human nature, may sometimes come by chance to a man who doesn't understand its science. He, as it were, stumbles upon it. When he stumbles upon it, he generally interprets it as coming from outside. So this explains why an inspiration or transcendental knowledge may be the same in different countries, but in one country it will seem to come through an angel, and in another through a deva, and in a third through God. What does it mean? It means that the mind brought the knowledge by its own nature, and that the finding of the knowledge was interpreted according to the belief and education of the person through whom it came. The real fact is that these various men, as it were, stumbled upon this superconscious state. The yogi says there is a great danger in stumbling upon this state. In a good many cases, there is the danger of the brain being deranged. And as a rule, you will find that all those men, however great they were, who had stumbled upon this superconscious state without understanding it, groped in the dark, and generally had along with their knowledge some quaint superstition. They opened themselves to hallucinations. Muhammad claimed that the angel Gabriel came to him in a cave one day and took him on a heavenly horse, Harak, and he visited the heavens. But with all that, Muhammad spoke some wonderful truths. If you read the Quran, you find the most wonderful truths mixed with superstitions. How will you explain it? That man was inspired, no doubt, but that inspiration was, as it were, stumbled upon. He was not a trained yogi and didn't know the reason of what he was doing. Think of the good Muhammad did to the world, and think of the great evil that has been done through his fanaticism. Think of the millions massacred through his teachings. Mothers bereft of their children, children made orphans, whole countries destroyed, millions upon millions of people killed. So we see this danger by studying the lives of great teachers like Muhammad and others. Yet we find at the same time that they were all inspired. Whenever a prophet got into the superconscious state by heightening his emotional nature, he brought away from it not only some truths but some fanaticism. Also, some superstition which injured the world as much as the greatness of the teaching helped. To get any reason out of the mass of incongruity we call human life, we have to transcend our reason. But we must do it scientifically, slowly by regular practice, and we must cast off all superstition. We must take up the study of the superconscious state just as any other science. On reason, we must have to lay our foundation. We must follow reason as far as it leads, and when reason fails, reason itself will show us the way to the highest plane. When you hear a man say, "I am inspired," and then talk or irrationally reject it, why? Because these three states, instinct, reason, and superconsciousness, or the unconscious, conscious, and superconscious states, belong to one and the same mind. There are not three minds in one man, but one state of it develops into the others. Instinct develops into reason, and the reason into the transcendental consciousness. Therefore, not one of the states contradicts the other. Real inspiration never contradicts reason, but fulfills it. Just as you find the great prophets saying, "I come not to destroy but to fulfill," so inspiration always comes to fulfill reason and is in harmony with it. All the different steps in yoga are intended to bring us scientifically to the superconscious state or samadhi. Furthermore, this is a most vital point to understand, that inspiration is as much in every man's nature as it was in that of the ancient prophets. These prophets were not unique. They were men as you or I. They were great yogis. They had gained this super consciousness, and you and I can get the same. They were not peculiar people. The very fact that one man ever reached that state proves that it is possible for every man to do so. Not only is it possible, but every man must eventually get to that state, and that is religion. Experience is the only teacher we have. We may talk and reason all our lives, but we shall not understand a word of truth until we experience it ourselves. You cannot hope to make a man a surgeon by simply giving him a few books. You cannot satisfy my curiosity to see a country by showing me a map. I must have actual experience. Maps can only create curiosity in us to get more perfect knowledge. Beyond that, they have no value whatever. Clinging to books only degenerates the human mind. Was there ever a more horrible blasphemy than the statement that all the knowledge of God is confined to this or that book? How dare man call God infinite and yet try to compress him within the covers of a little book? Millions of people have been killed because they didn't believe what the books said, because they wouldn't see all the knowledge of God within the covers of a book. Of course, this killing and murdering has gone by, but the world is still tremendously bound up in a belief in books. In order to reach the superconscious state in a scientific manner, it is necessary to pass through the various steps of Raja Yoga. I have been teaching. After pratyahara and dharana, we come to dhyana, meditation, when the mind has been trained to remain fixed on a certain internal or external location. There comes to it the power of flowing in an unbroken current, as it were, towards that point. This state is called dhyana. When one has so intensified the power of dhyana as to be able to reject the external part of perception and remain meditating only on the internal part, the meaning that state is called samadhi. The three dharana, dhyana and samadhi together are called samyama. That is, if the mind can first concentrate upon an object and then is able to continue in that concentration for a length of time, and then by continued concentration to dwell only on the internal part of the perception of which the object was the effect, everything comes under the control of such a mind. This meditative state is the highest state of existence. So long as there is desire, no real happiness can come. It is only the contemplative, witness-like study of objects that brings to us real enjoyment and happiness. The animal has its happiness in the senses, the man in his intellect, and the God in his spiritual contemplation. It is only to the soul that has attained to this contemplative state that the world really becomes beautiful. To him who desires nothing and doesn't mix himself up with them, the manifold changes of nature are one panorama of beauty and sublimity. These ideas have to be understood in dhyana or meditation. We hear a sound. First, there is the external vibration. Second, the nerve motion that carries it to the mind. Third, the reaction from the mind, along with which flashes the knowledge of the object, which was the external cause of these different changes from the ethereal vibrations to the mental reactions. These three These three are called in yoga Shabd, sound, artha, meaning, and Gyan, knowledge. In the language of physics and physiology, they are called the ethereal vibration, the motion in the nerve and brain, and the mental reaction. Now these, though distinct processes, have become mixed up in such a fashion as to become quite indistinct. In fact, we cannot now perceive any of these, we only perceive their combined effect, what we call the external object. Every act of perception includes these three, and there is no reason why we shouldn't be able to distinguish them. When, by the previous preparations, it becomes strong and controlled and has the power of finer perception, the mind should be employed in meditation. This meditation must begin with gross objects and slowly rise to finer and finer until it becomes objectless. The mind should first be employed in perceiving the external causes of sensations, then the internal motions, and then its own reaction. When it has succeeded in perceiving the external causes of sensations by themselves, the mind will acquire the power of perceiving all fine material existence, all fine bodies and forms. When it can succeed in perceiving the motions inside by themselves, it will gain the control of all mental waves, itself or in others, even before they have translated themselves into physical energy. And when he will be able to perceive the mental reaction by itself, the yogi will acquire the knowledge of everything, as every sensible object and every thought is the result of this reaction. Then will he have seen the very foundations of his mind, and it will be under his perfect control. Different powers will come to the yogi, and if he yields to the temptations of any one of these, the road to his further progress will be barred. Such is the evil of running after enjoyments. But if he is strong enough to reject even these miraculous power, he will attain to the goal of yoga, the complete suppression of the waves in the ocean of the mind. Then the glory of the soul, undisturbed by the distractions of the mind or motions of the body, will shine in its full effulgence, and the yogi will find himself as he is and as he always was, the essence of knowledge, the immortal, the all-pervading.